All right,
Just
guys.
in case you don't know.
Full transparency. I'm like, Brandon, sit down. We gotta do this video. And your head's cut off, so you're gonna have to lean back. And so then I'm looking around. I'm like, where's my phone? And he's like, honey, your phone is right there. So full transparency. If I don't do much talking tonight, it's because apparently my brain is done.
No.
So happy Friday. Now it's 2. Hi, Michelle.
Michelle.
So give us a hi when you guys get on.
Appreciate you.
Hi, Tiffany. So we're on our thread. We said it was going to be 30 days of live, but I think there's at least 30 more days of quarantine. So we're just going to go live. We're just going to go live forever. That's the plan until we run out of stuff to talk about. So you guys should keep asking us questions so that we know what you want to hear. So tonight we're going to talk about values. I'm going to preface this with, if you haven't seen our 6 human needs workshop that we did it not this week but the Wednesday before last, just go search 6 human needs in my feed. It's an hour and a half. It was long, but it's so good. It's totally worth it, so go watch that. Our dog has her needs not being met right now. So go watch that, and that will help you a ton. So I feel like the vibe in the world right now is pretty heavy, right? Like, we all got the news that school's not going back. Suzanne, I know you're on here. I mean, we've got a lot of seniors that don't get to have all the things, and that's heartbreaking, and people that are in 8th grade that don't get to hang out with their friends, and I feel for everyone, and I think there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of sadness for those kids, and there's a lot of pressure on parents that are homeschooling, and so we wanted to talk today about values, and then we'll probably go into kind of rules and boundaries tomorrow, but your values go very closely with your 6 human needs. And what a lot of these kids are missing right now is connection, and what they felt like was growth, and that kind of stuff. So, go back and watch that. It's so worth it. And moving forward, we're going to be in this longer than we thought. So understanding this about yourself and the people in your house that are going through these things, that's going to help you guys a lot. So.
Well, and especially with all this, you guys, I think with a lot of the world and the scenario we're dealing with, we get a lot of the scenarios of like, I just don't understand, and this, yet again, if you haven't watched the needs video, we talked a lot about like why people are going out and hoarding all the toilet paper and buying all the supplies and doing all those kind of things, right? Anything we do, we try to get to meet our needs, right? Like, from moment to moment to everything that we do, we try to get our own personal needs met. And so, what you looking at?
Sorry, you have like one hair that I can't remember what it's doing. I cut Brandon's hair, by the way, you guys, if you haven't noticed.
But the other thing that ties in is your values and your rules, but we'll focus on values tonight. And for me, this was like a game changer for me. I never have heard it or explained in this manner before, but I think for a lot of you guys, if you feel like you're on the roller coaster ride, if you feel like you're constantly yo-yoing, if you constantly feel like in the midst of this thing, you're just hovering around the kitchen and you're just kind of finding yourself doing certain things, despite, even though you may have all the goals in the world, you don't understand why you seem to still fall off the wagon, right? Like, if you self-sabotage, if you do all these things, the better we can understand this, it will probably clarify a lot of your own frustration, right? Like, this is one element that we really try to hit home with all our clients, because this opens up so many just doorways and like light bulb moments of like, well, no shit, that's why I always do this, right? Like, it's not the fact that I don't have willpower. It's not the fact that it just, I'm fighting my own self. I'm fighting my own internal value system from what I'm experiencing, right? And I think for a lot of our clients we've been working with from our gym, they're fighting some values as far as like, well, no, the only way that I get to experience exercise is by going to the gym, right? Now that's cut off. Now I don't know how to experience that, right? And so we're working on broadening and expanding value there in order for them to still feel healthy and fit by going through that, okay? So when we're talking about values, all right, so there's 2 types of values that we talk about, all right? Now, the first one is moving towards values, all right? Now, hold on. Let me retract a little bit. So your value is essentially anything that you hold dear to you, all right? So it's essentially anything that we want to experience, or even if it's something we don't want to experience, right? It's essentially, I like to look at it, it's kind of like an emotion that is driving us, okay? Now, so like love would be a value, happiness would be a value, freedom, joy would be a value. So essentially when we're talking about values, we're talking about essentially 2 types of things, okay? We're talking about moving toward values and moving away from values, okay? Now, An example of a moving towards value could be like love, happiness, joy, excitement, right? Those type of things are things that we want to move towards. They create motivation. They get us going. Now, if I was to ask, for example, and so there, along with our values are moving forward and moving towards and moving away from values, there's our means and then our ends. Okay. Now, this is where it was like the big aha moment for me was when we got clarified what our means and what our ends are. Okay. So our means are essentially the things that get us to that end value, right? So I said love, joy, excitement. That's an end value in which I want to experience, right? Like that's the emotion, that's the end goal emotion that I want to shoot for. Now, if I was to ask, for example, like if I was to ask somebody, okay, what allows you, what's 3 values that you hold dear to yourself, right? And so it's perhaps that person says family, love, and success. All right. So for that family, love, and adventure. We'll say that. Family, love, and adventure. All right. Now, 3 of those are of the 3. So family would be a means, right? Like I get my means the love would be the end value. Okay, love would be the end value of what they're trying to experience. Now, in order to receive that value, family would be there as a means, and so would be adventure. Okay, so those 2, they're not in ends. The adventure and your family aren't in ends. They're a means in order for you to receive that end value in which you're trying to aspire to. That makes sense?
Yes.
Yes. Now, the problem that we oftentimes...
we need a whiteboard.
Yes. The problem that we oftentimes see, you guys, is we get so fixated on the means that we don't really ever receive and get to our ends. Because we get so wrapped up in the means, right? Like, I need my family to do this. I need to make $1 million. I need to have a 12-pack, right? I need to have 6% body fat, right? Like, those are all means. That's not a value in which I'm trying to elicit an emotional response from. But yet again, the problem that oftentimes what we get wrapped up in is we get so wrapped up in the means or the how, right? Like we talked about the how the other night of like, we get so fixated on the how that we actually never arrive at the thing that we're trying to accomplish. So that's kind of where it ties into, okay? So there's means and then there's ends, okay? Now, yet again, there's moving towards and there's moving away, right? Like moving towards are motivated, driven ones. Those are the ones that create excitement. Those are ones that get like the dopamine flowing in my brain. If I want to experience love, I want to experience joy, I want to experience happiness, right? Like from my own personal moving towards is love is my number 1 value. After that, it's contribution, it's growth, it's joy, it's excitement. Those are my moving toward values. Those are my own personal moving towards values. Now, on the opposite end of that, those are my moving away from values. Are values that essentially are things that want me to go in the opposite direction, right? Like for me, my number 1 is regret, anger, disappointment, sadness. Regret, like I said, but essentially, what would be the opposite of growth would be obviously death, but regret. So along those, that would be my moving away from values. So those are values that I want to avoid from feeling, right? And so yet again, what would be my means to not experiencing those type of emotional feelings and experience those moving away from, right? Like those don't elicit any sort of motivation for me to aspire to create in my life. That makes sense? Yes. So when we're looking at values, you guys, that's what we're talking about, okay? We're not talking about the means. We're talking about the ends. There's 2 types that we're looking for. You're moving towards and you're moving away, okay? Now, oftentimes, you guys, because I know for myself, until I was shown this, I never even thought about even asking myself the question as far as what are my values, what are my top values, and what does it take in order for me to elicit those, right? Like, and I think what we're experiencing a lot right now, you guys, is we're seeing a lot of people's values start to come unraveled a little bit because of the definition in which we put around that. isn't necessarily able to be met right now, right? Like I use the example of people coming into our facility, right? Like in order for them to be healthy, right? Like the end value or the end value, the moving towards value would essentially be health that they're trying to aspire towards. The way that they define that possibly would be by going to the gym, right? Like in order for them to experience health, they have to physically go to the gym. Well, because that is being removed by basically higher authorities, they're no longer able to experience that based off of the definition in which they have around that. And so what we need to do, because yet again, for a lot of the people that we're, not a lot, but for different clients we're working with, is we need to expand your definition of the way that you receive feeling healthy. Otherwise, in this duration in which you're going through there, you're actually going to go the opposite direction of experiencing that, right? So oftentimes it's understanding what is your definition and what does it take in order for you to experience that value in which that you're trying to move towards. So it's not just what is your value, but the next question around that is what does it take in order for you to experience that?
That was good. This is like his jam. But if you guys haven't noticed, we have certain things that's like, that's his jam, my jam, something else. So I think that was amazing. I know for me on the personal side, I think what's really interesting, you guys, is that our needs and our values are so close. And if you can start to actually define these and understand these in your life, for me, it was a really big thing was that I realized that freedom is one of my top values. And
so let me, before you get to that. So also you guys, it's understanding that it's clarifying your values, but it's also understanding that they're kind of like on a totem pole, right? Like we have certain values that rank number one. Like I said, my number one value is love, right? Like in order for me to experience love, it used to be that I had to be around somebody that I had to be around my wife, somebody I felt super connected with. I had to have physical connection. I had to have them agree with me. I had to have all these staple hold rules that didn't really allow me to experience love except for like 10% of the time, right? And so for me, I had to expand that instead of, in order for me to feel love, I get to just be in her presence. Every time we have a phone call, anytime I get a text message, anytime I get a smile from her, anytime I get my kids in my presence, anytime I get to play a game with my kids, I get to experience love, right? And so, but with that, I understand that my number one value is that, right? And so from there, I break my other values down underneath of that, right? And so what Courtney's going to explain here in a second is by identifying where your values fall on that totem pole, you can start to see if there's going to be confliction within yourself based off of your own values.
Yeah, and so I think what was interesting for me is like, love is still my top as well, but very close behind it is freedom. And so I started looking, like, I really had never thought about that. But then I started, when I realized that, I was like, okay, obviously I've been on a journey to like find food freedom and find freedom from like all my body image struggles and all of that kind of stuff. And so, but I started to look at all the things that I really want in life. And most of them are based around freedom, time freedom, money freedom, freedom from limiting beliefs, etc. And what was interesting was that freedom is my top value, but the way I was meeting my needs were totally in confliction with that, right? And so I was using food to meet my need for certainty, but my value was freedom, which is why it always felt so terrible because like I wanted freedom. And that comes from being a kid. Like I love my parents and mom. If you watch this, you guys were amazing. I get it. But my parents were very, strict maybe isn't the word, but kind of like they were very protective. And I get it because now I'm going to be that way. But like I craved freedom and it's still one of my top things. Like my favorite thing to do in the world is to snowmobile because of the freedom I feel. But what I didn't realize was going in my life for so long was that freedom was a really high value for me, yet I was giving myself rules and using my need for certainty to limit my own freedom. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like it was one thing to understand my need for certainty, but then to understand why it felt so bad when I was doing it, like all the light bulbs. And literally, you guys, if you start to put the work into this and you can do this with us, right? Like there's lots of different ways you can dive into this with us. But if you want to go deeper into this stuff, like it just feels like you take the blindfolds off and you're like, oh, well, that's why I do what I do. It's not that I wasn't motivated. It's not that I just self-sabotage. It's not that my goals don't matter. Like, it's none of those things. It's just that you don't understand what's going on internally that's causing you to react, right? Like, there's so much going on subconsciously and inside of your hardwired beliefs since you were a kid that you're just acting out of those and you don't even realize it. And when you start to pull the like shades away and you're like, oh, well, that makes a ton of sense, right? Because even now, like, obviously, I basically intuitively eat. I eat, just based on what I need. But we all have those moments, right? And so for me, like, if I ever try to go back and be like, I want to do a reset, like, I want to get my gut healthy, etc., and I did that a little while ago, I instantly get this, like, lack energy. And it's because it makes me feel like I don't have freedom. And right? And so it's like, okay, well, where's this balance and how do I play those? And for me, like, anytime the stuff still shows up, you just get to go, okay, this is just more learning. This is just more growth. This is just more healing that I need to do. And it's like, it's all just data and you get to love yourself through it. But again, it's understanding, like, what are your values? What are your needs? How are they working together? How are they playing together? How are they not getting met right now the way they used to? And like, again, we're in tighter quarters with our family. And so if you're having a lot of conflict with your significant other, we're going to do an episode on that as well. We're going to call these episodes. We should turn this into a podcast. We're going to do an episode on that where it's like, okay, what's going on and how do we, understand ourselves first, and then how do we understand our partner and our kids and our families so that by the end of this 30 days, we're actually stronger and not going the wrong direction. So I had a thought and I lost it, so go.
Well, I think with that, you guys, is how many of you guys have ever started, I think for most of us, how many of you guys started a exercise plan or a nutrition plan or whatever, and it's lined out specifically, like, eat this many macros and at this specific time, you do this, and yada, yada, yada goes on, right? And you're good for 14 days of it. Day 15 hits and all of a sudden, like, you feel restricted and you feel kind of brought down. You feel like you can't do it, but all of a sudden you fall off, right? And you paint the picture to yourself and you tell the story to yourself, well, I'm just not dedicated. I just don't have the willpower. You know what? This just isn't for me. Maybe exercise, maybe nutrition is not my thing, whatever it may be. Well, it's because just what Courtney was illustrating there was the fact of, for a lot of us, you guys, when we feel, yet again, we all have certain personality types, right? But if you're rebellious by nature, right, and you don't essentially like being told what to do, like, I've had this conversation with a lot of athletes over the years, but like, if you're rebellious by nature, and I tell you, like, in order for you to get to your end goal, you have to precisely follow this, and if you deviate at all, you're going to fail. What's the likelihood that, you'll do it for a short amount of time. And I can speak to this because I've seen a lot of people do this. But once you feel like you no longer have a say in this and you're no longer experiencing your freedom and your independence to feel like you're able to make selections, it's a confliction of your values. And no matter what, You'll sacrifice your values to meet your needs in short time frames, but sooner or later we want to stay congruent and consistent to what our messages are to ourselves. And if the message to myself is I want independence, I want freedom, I don't care. You can tell me you want this goal over here, but if your value is this up here, you're always going to meet this before you get to this at the end of this, right? And so that's why it's very vital that we clarify and see how these things are playing roles in your life, because yet again, we've seen this for years with a lot of different people. Like, it's most likely the fact that you're not lazy. It's not the fact that you don't have willpower. It's not the fact that you're not dedicated. It's probably the fact that your values are probably maybe misaligned for the things that you want in your life, or the definition around that which you're telling yourself in order for you to meet the way that you receive that value probably is too concrete, and you're probably playing with the deck not stacked in your favor, right? Like, that's the other thing that most of us tend to do, is we play with almost like the playing against the house in order for us to receive the value in which we are. Like, most of us have rules that are so, like, absurd for us to like realistically meet our value, that we maybe experience that value once every 10 times it comes through.
And the funny part, you guys, is you are the house.
Yes.
Like, you created this, and that's the funny thing when you're like, I'm doing this to myself, right? Like, and so it's getting, like Brandon said, it's like getting to expand that and to make it bigger. And like, the cool thing is this does get to be easy once you start to realize it, and you're like, oh, well, this makes a lot more sense. Like, I'm not always fighting myself, and I don't have to fight myself. And you know, when we talk about our shift program, like, our real goal, you guys, is to have you completely whole and all your needs met, and like everything you need is inside of you, and you actually believe and feel that way. And then anything you get from the outside is just a value add, right? Like, that is the actual goal, that you are all the things you need from the inside, and you're not searching for anything external to ever validate you or meet those needs, because you're able to do it internally, and then everything else is just like icing on top of the cake.
Well, with that, I know Courtney touched a little bit on the spousal and like relationship stuff and everything else. Right? Like, how many of you guys right now are in closer conference with your significant other than maybe normal, right? Like, there's no sports to change the channel to, there's no concerts, there's no activities, there's nothing else to really take our attention away from each other than the space that we're in, right? And so perhaps the conversation has come up of like, I just don't understand why you do that. I don't understand why you think that way. I don't understand why you say those certain things. Well, it's understanding that
No, not me.
You got me at heart, brother. But you're right. But it's understanding. So the reason why we oftentimes experience that is because, yet again, your values may not align exactly with what your significant other has, right? Like, you may have the similar values, but your definition in which receiving those and getting those may be two different things as well. So the more you understand this for yourself, the more you can understand that for your partner, right? Like, it was always that same thing going through this, right? Like, we've had that conversation for years of like, well, why do you keep kicking yourself in the ass when you fall off of it or you decide not to do this program anymore? When all the reality is like, well, we're fighting an uphill battle because your one or two value there is freedom, right? Like, well, why don't we change this a little bit, or perhaps give yourself a little bit more freedom instead of doing this hardcore strict plan of doing the whole 30 or this elimination thing and everything else? Why don't we have a better understanding so you can still experience that independence and that freedom, but still move yourself towards the goals that you want to accomplish?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do a total side note, and this maybe should be its own thing, but so I was just thinking about this as we're talking of if this is resonating with you and you feel like freedom is one of your top values and you're really struggling right now, you need to look at that, right? Because a lot of our freedoms have been taken away from us. And so I think if you're really struggling with like, I can't do this, I can't go out and do that, my poor kids can't, like, if you're in that narrative right now, you need to actually think about, is freedom one of your top values? And if it is, you get to choose to shift it, right? And so this was a huge...
Well, I would imagine, honestly, why a lot of people probably continue to choose to go against the system and go against the recommendations, right? Because that's probably one of your top values.
Yeah. So what I was going to say, because I am someone that needs freedom and I'm actually doing really well with all of this, is that like when you shift the way you look at it, that you still have a choice, right? Like for me, for freedom, it was the choice to have my freedom. And so like right now I'm in the mindset of like, this is my choice to stay home and be safe and be part of, you know, making this better, not making this worse. Like it's my choice on what I get to do and how I get to show up for myself versus like they're telling me I can't do this, right? Like you do still have a choice. So if you're struggling with freedom, I want you to think about, how are you making this choice and why is that choice in alignment with the kind of person that you want to be and the values that you want to create, right? And so, and if you're struggling with this, just reach out. We can talk about this a little more in depth. We can walk through it with you.
And I do have a PDF that can kind of walk through this as well. So if you want that, comment below and I can make sure we get that to you. But essentially it walks you through like how to go about putting out your specific values based off of moving towards and away, and kind of how to line those out. Because I know for me, like this was a massive game changer of like, well, why the hell did nobody tell me this before, right? Like, why does everyone always talk about like SMART goals, like set, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-sensitive goals? Like, don't get me wrong, like there are systems around that are beneficial. But at the same time, for most of us, we set those goals based off of things that are already going to conflict with our values on there. So we're already setting ourselves up for failure.
Yeah. So if you guys want to know more about this, let us know. We could totally do like an actual Zoom call and go through this with you guys if you want to do it. I think it'd actually be really cool to like get in the place of like getting a little breath work in and then getting in that mind, like getting in that feeling and then actually going through this. It's super cool when you start to realize it. And it's one of those things too, and we could talk about this like with your spouse. If you guys can do this together, like the amount of growth you could actually have in this time could be amazing. Or you can turn to go the other way. You can turn to avoid each other. You can, drink alcohol. You can turn to food. You can go into avoidance and you can go into that scenario and butt heads for 30 days, or you can choose to grow together. So tonight's was really long. Hopefully this was super helpful. So a couple announcements. If you are struggling and you're kind of in this place of like, I'm having a hard time processing. I'm just like, if you're in your head and you're sad, you're angry, you're any of those things, right? Just I'm coaching breath work, so I'm facilitating breath work. This has been an amazing healing journey for me and for all the people I've been working with. So I'm running it every Saturday, 7 a.m. It's a Zoom call. It's free, donation based, whatever you want to do. Like, it's not about that, but I want to be here to facilitate some of this for you. If you guys haven't done breath work, it's kind of like meditation on drugs. Like, it's better than meditation. So it's focused breath for about 15 to 20 minutes. But it's really getting you to set those intentions, release things. It lets your body process all the stuff that's going on and get your head out of the game. So if you guys want to do that with me tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., just send me a DM. I'll send you the link. Or it might even just be on my page. But I need you to do a waiver before you do it just to make sure you're in good health. But I would love to help you with that. So if you're struggling, try breath work. I'm telling you, it is amazing. It is incredible how much can happen in 20 minutes. And then a couple other things. A lot of you guys have seen the kids program. School's been canceled, at least where we are. Your kids are going to go crazy. So start now. Get them in the kids program. We're running it Monday, Wednesday, Friday for half an hour. It's amazing. They do it via Zoom. It's $30. Like, we just want your kids to be healthy. The more they move.
There's a reason why. I mean, there's thousands of studies out there, you guys, that show that physical activity helps them, obviously, with cognition, brain function, interaction, communication, all those kind of things. But more importantly, like, I know that now we're putting on the hat of teacher role along with all the other balls that we're juggling throughout the day. And them having space and them having time to move and do their thing has been awesome. So I think for not only their sake, I'm obviously first and foremost, but also for your own sake, like, it's meant to help you guys out because we have 2 kids of our own.
Yeah. Yes, Tanya, I would totally send you that link. So that's going on. And then we know a lot of people are kind of struggling with their own exercise. So we are, again, doing live coaching that you can do from anywhere, equipment or no equipment. So if you guys want info on that, let us know. So I feel like it got a lot more like real today, and now we're all kind of going, oh, this could be way longer than we thought. So we talked about last night having those habits, but if you want any of those things, let us know. We're here to help you guys. Drop us any questions, any comments, anything that would be helpful. Like, just tell us and we'll do it for you guys. Like, our goal is to show up and serve you in any way that we can. So we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. And breathwork tomorrow. Tanya, there's also CrossFit at 9, and same thing for anybody else. If you guys want to try a class, let us know. You can try one, see what it's like. So breathwork at 7 and CrossFit at 9. Yes, Nate, I will totally get you that info. We would love to see you.
Yes.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.